Shirley here with Sirius Dallas Moon. This is Soul Hour, Soul Day. And the Sun is still conjoining Mars, ascendant 29 degrees Capricorn, Venus, 22 in Capricorn, squaring Chiron in Aries. And the Moon is separating from Spica, 27 degrees Libra. Midheaven ruled by Mars. So we have Mars and Saturn ruling the ascendant in Midheaven. And Venus 22 in squaring Chiron 22 in. I want to talk about the things that collapse when Uranus goes through Taurus. And ever since 2018, Uranus has been going through Taurus, and it was the aftermath of the Me Too, right before COVID. And so many people began to be aware of, hey, what is the sex that they do want? Regardless of gender, by the way. Do I rather go through the tedious process of trying to get my rights through a procedure that was completely stacked up against me, where those who are supposed to decide, the judges, are probably getting turned on by raping children? Or do I rather participate in a business that is awakening people to jade eggs and sovereign sexuality, manifesting with the sexual energy, and so on and so forth, of our own? Okay? Now, what happens where this awakening happens? Everything that was reliant on people not being awakened to their own sovereign sexual self, sexual energy, what would their sexuality look like if they had gone through no trauma and lived in the best conditions? Everything that relies on siphoning that energy, any industry that relies on people going to what I now know as trafficked people, but what people think sex work or OnlyFans, everything that relies on controlling the sexual energy of human beings, siphoning it and producing more enslaving structures to keep people in trauma so that their life energy can be harvested. It's all the way to the 2030 agenda. And that stresses up those who are not up to speed with safe, sane relations. Orgasmic birthing. Even the cloning project relies on the wombs of girls. Now, after trying to suppress femicide, trying to break people down and women down, trying to call men that are attuned soft, well, in fact, these are the men that still get hard when all the other men can't, because they understand that what they call the soft is attunement, but whatever. Trying to sustain their investments in enslaving humanity and their secret societies that build all around enslavement and perpetuating trauma to one another, the collapsing juristic processes that are not compatible with, it was, let's say, sexual trauma, is not compatible, the evidence base that does not take into account that it harms the speech, the ability to testify, the psychological components. The collapsing occultism that was relying on the vacant from spirit rather than a union of spirit and matter as alchemy. The industries that are reliant on people being addicted to sex and drugs. It's the wealth of nations. And after all they tried to do from keeping people to awaken to the fact that it's only their embodied self, as though there was no trauma, type the sexuality that is the origin of sensuality, that is the source of wealth, solutions, manifestation, and compatibility. You know, in these elite circles, the moon nakshatra of the navel, which I also have, is incompatible with all the people around that are adjoined. And those people sometimes do real estate and minerals mining unethically. Now, if you think about orgasmic birthing, then basically we think about the conditions, the living conditions. Let's say a child begins to explore their orgasmic self as teenager. They need their own dwelling, which in certain societies they do have, is far enough for the parents so that they would not hear their child orgasms, and a society that's safe enough so that they will be safe to give the child a distance without fearing that the child, God forbid, will be raped or assaulted or attacked and they wouldn't hear them screaming. Think about orgasmic birthing, okay? It's very loud. When we don't have the societal conditions for orgasmic birthing, can we really complain when the society is exterminated? It's housing, but it's also culture. Can we really complain about bloodlines not being continued? And by the way, as embodied woman, if I see two videos of two men, by the way, let's say both Asian, one talking about how women that are not educated, basically women that are not allowed to explore education, and in that world I will be privileged because I'm educated, are collapsing society because they don't give birth. Because the women that are, I'm sorry, that educated women collapse society because they don't give birth a lot. By the way, in China they limited birth, but whatever. And another video, another man, also Asian, he left being doctor, being educated, doing something that meant to him in his life, whether academic or not, is not the point. And he felt that the profession of medicine is not really curing. So he decided to take a break into what actually cures and open a podcast that talks about that. He did that for himself. It's not a show for the women out there. And then he has video right in between the radio issues between Greece airport and Amsterdam airport, going completely locked down because of radar issues, that says if people come from hierarchical society, there was research that says co-pilot will not be listened to and the pilot will crash the plane. But if they come from ahierarchical societies, then the co-pilot will be listened to, and then they can prevent plane crash. So people that come in aviation with less hierarchical societies crash less planes. ATC to tower. Whose bloodline do you think is more likely to find women that would want, regardless of the levels of education, to continue the bloodline? Both very intelligent, both good looking, both doing their own thing. One is going against the world that negates fertility. One is going against the statistic of what they believe makes fertility. One doesn't even mention the word fertility. Now, this is something where, just like with women, if men see two women, one complaining about the no good man, no good man, no good man, no good man, okay? And she can look beautiful, do her own thing, and so on. One living her life. And if she ever complains, it's about the structure of secret societies not allowing, and each person would need to deal with that, or we need to have alternative societal structure that allows for life, not because men are to blame. Now, Venus now squares Chiron, and we have femicide squaring men, fearing that at war, where a lot of men are killed, they wouldn't have continuation of their bloodline. Mm-hmm. We can see how femicide comes in clash with bloodlines continue. They want to continue the bloodline but with no women. Now, birthing both for women and for men is about relaxing into something that they're totally not in control over. And allowing life to come out of the womb quite vocally. And okay, it's not for the control freak women, and it's not for the control freak men. And also, as woman who does not fall into the category of uneducated, simple woman, yes, why would I still be having men around me flocking that have those desires to control women? Why are they doing here? Okay, but yes, I'm not talking about this example of the videos, I'm talking about real life. What are they doing? What in energy are they trying to do next to me? I'm obviously not a typecast. that would continue, that according to all of the best research would continue their bloodline. So, well, one reason could be is because they're not really attracted to simple women that are not a woman one could have in conversation with. By the way, regardless of whether she went to university or not, educated is not just. I went to university. Most of my education is. I learned things in university, of course, but it's not the entirety of my education. No. I know women that didn't go to university and they developed global businesses. Yes, I'm 41 and I have to tend to the things that I'm tending to because Aries is around for this planet of my fourth and seventh, but also my skill and income. Um, and basically, this means changes in the society of the elites. Oh. Now, the awakening of people is not stopped. Perpetuating trauma timelines only cause the people to further negate those trauma timelines. Mm-hmm. I'm recording, thank you. And be even more deeply aware of more and more things that don't just need to change in society, but are set to manifest to change in society. That the wealth, the funding, the resources, the energy, the skill is our own life energy. We don't have to think where would we fund that from, because the crimes against humanity that were done to take our creative power okay, there were illegal crimes. And as we call our energy back, we manifest with our energy. People that are fragmented into trauma manifest mass graves. Mass graves of those who siphon energy. No, the people that used creative energy that they got derived from trauma, from shadows that somebody still had to heal, and manifested for themselves things that are not compatible with the creative desire of the energy that they took the energy from. See the collapse. This is a great time to think about our moon and our emotions and our needs, not just erotic needs, and have them met in a way that is adaptable and honor our sovereignty and sovereignty of another. Maybe grown people need to get themselves a stuffy. I'm not joking. Return into the child's self and meet the child's needs. Because it's not this point of, it's not about blame or shame or not at all. It's about, hey, we have, once we are aware of what is going on, then there are things that are possible to do to change these relational dynamics that do affect fertility and support a word of orgasmic birthing. Taurus also reminded us also the women that are, whether business oriented or academic oriented, that rest and embodiment is important to our endeavors, to our intellectual endeavors. And basically, the not only from outside things are collapsing, but also from within. Yes, if after the Me Too, I was like, also let's take a look at the embodied sexuality, jade egg, and so on and so forth, not even knowing that I have my child needs, okay, but not erotic needs as child and also as woman, to be met before I can even have the sexuality that, okay, so I was looking in one level of interference for something that needs complementing from other levels of interferences as well. Do we live in a world that allows women to glow in their natural glow? Shout out to Yasmin, okay, what she talks about, she comes from Iran, where limiting the dress of women was prevalent. And she grew up actually in a matriarchy, talking about how even the styling for our own gaze, with our own embodied self, is a boundary, and this is Venus. Not because nobody wants to be seen with an unhappy person, no, because it is a part of expressing ourselves as women. Yes, thank you. Even, for example, where I have my own cooking tiny spot, there's my own creation and my own cooking, not because my mother is a great cook. But my moon is my moon. And it takes the burden off the shoulders of a woman that is not supposed to cook for her daughter at this age, maybe the other way around. Why? Because the mother said only to marry and have child out of love, and child grew into that tradition, but the world was trying to make that tradition go extinct. And then humanity goes extinct. And the people that had so much time in 150 years of modern feminism to adapt, understanding that, particularly now with this Venus 22, which is femicide, square Chiron 22, which is bloodlines that can die at war, Mars in Saturn, so it's bloodlines, dynasties, families. There is still time, but it cannot be by, forcing, because that creates orphans and create child soldiers that are cut off from their lineage. I'm third generation to Holocaust survivor. It was him and his brother, all the family died now. If they were also marrying the girls, or energy siphoning from the womb of the women. It's not about blame and shame, but that makes humanity go. It creates an atmosphere that to live in as a kind of a Holocaust. And then the Holocaust came and took them. These are horrible deaths. Okay, it's not like they were euthanized. But then my mother would see people not married out of love around her, society, the after-war society. She would see that people not married out of love is creating many problems. So, was she married out of love? This wasn't the perfect marriage. Both came from background of abuse and neglect. And now, birth a daughter, and the daughter saw women, how should I say that? When people don't have sex as will and consent, then they keep attacking one another. That if I try to express me as a woman in society, everybody responds to that in such radical, weird ways that is just so weird. And there are certain things happening in energy that are just not something so weird. The world, the more I listen to Annika Lucas, the more I understand that I grew up in society that is really like that. Slavery, exploitation, all these things, they don't go, limiting of movement, they don't go together with fertility and orgasmic birthing. I don't make the rules. And that does not go together with continuation of the bloodline, be it aristocracy or common people. Remember, there were times where there was such plague where the aristocracy died, and they can't trust vaccines. And there was a new nobility. Who was the new nobility? The slaves that worked on the farms, on the land. meaning the world is changing, trying to stop it from, how should I say that? Trying to perpetuate trauma to siphon energy actually requires so much energy that is not economic. And those are bubbles that time and time again collapse. It's not about having lots of children. Now, when we are aware of that, we basically call on our energy back. And by the way, speaking up, exposing the truth of extortion calls, the energy siphoning, the rituals, this is all negating that spirit of silencing that is causing the extinction of humanity. As Venus is approaching to close a cycle with Pluto, what are those things? I don't know. It was very weird. I didn't even see what is it. Um, we understand that the atmospheres that were, how should I say that, not honoring of women, sexuality, the feminine, that they, how should I say that, this is not, they collapse. Okay, they collapse. And yes, because what can I, those societies will leave in women only to be manipulative or die. And the women decided, I don't want to be like that. I want to be a woman. Just like certain men went to study and to, um, have a profession and so on, but my sector is corrupt. So I'm going to take a break and do something else because I don't want to be in corruption. What if that corruption has to do with the fertility? So, um, I was trying to contact a famous hematologist in Israel to see if she can smuggle women that have Mengele experiments on Israeli women in Israel from the Dr. Mengeles that do ritual abuse in them in hospitals. Perhaps if men raise awareness to the phenomena, they will find more that their bloodline is not discontinued, let's say. Uh, if men were using women to harvest life energy, then they would have daughters and would do that as well to the daughters. And they were emperors, and they were elite, and they were. Then that collapses. Everything we need to sustain life goes through, basically, this connection that facilitates the orgasmic fertility. The orgasm that brings the water, the relaxed arousal, not the misplaced arousal, not the trauma. And why did it manifest for men? Things in the world to siphon energy through trauma, basically to traumatizing and raping women. Okay, this is a serious issue. It's because the things that they manifested were never real. They could manifest a car. They could manifest even a house. But this house would not nourish life. And the car would get them more, maybe women that were already traumatized, and they would siphon also their energy. And yes, but none of those manifestations was actually organic and true cohesion. The car would not be the car that sustains a century. Do we have cars that sustain centuries? And by the time they manifested the car, they're already flying cars. So they have to keep up with the line of production. And they get addicted because these men come from dopamine. Even if they have oxytocin and all the things that they need to supposedly appease, because the more this happens, the more it goes extinct, because it's not something that sustains humanity. So what happens? Women, let's say, would have sex with men, but she feels something missing. Okay, what missing? A love. Then he gets offended. I get offended. I told you, I'm for sex and with love. And then it's like, okay, that's what they call rape, but basically, that I was not, and that causes dissociation, that causes, then now the man feels really ashamed and dissociates and tries to project and doesn't know what to do. Then he goes with another woman with whom he's okay, doing the same mistake. Who will teach him? The emperors that did that to girls and gained supposed dynasty by that? There's no one to teach him. And the men that do talk about it seriously, they said, okay, if women don't choose men anymore, and let's say, yes, if you're a man that you're, how should I say that? You're a sound man, emotionally, providing in your own legacy or whatnot, respectful of women and so on and so forth, and you see women don't choose you, probably the problem is not you. Okay? Maybe we need to check with these women what they need. But if man is red pilled, let's say, and the man comes and says, well, you need to see if you are also a kind of man that a woman would choose. And people would probably think he's soft. Because they were growing in some atmosphere that was negating intimacy. Okay? Um, Now, it was centuries of women growing into those traumas. Just like if I want to do creative project with men, and our moon nakshatra is not compatible, then I know we both need different partners. By the way, tip for navel moon nakshatra, make sure that there are no navel moon nakshatras wanting to harvest the minerals of where the area of where you live. And for some of you, you may need to develop ethical sourcing of minerals and mining. I'm currently learning this topic myself, because what it means is that we would lose ideas, home, and children with that incompatibility. So we would kind of need to settle in our compatible areas for each and their own chart and mine the minerals there separately and have housing projects there separately and kind of stay in our lane geographically when it comes to housing ideas and children. I will be doing self-study with me live, where I learn about the mining of the minerals, how to ethically mine, how to maintain working conditions that are good, um, what areas, but also how what type of technology is produced in a way that doesn't have byproducts that later pollute the soil, the teeth, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot to learn for me. And if you know or have example of ethical mining of minerals and ethical technology, both in labor conditions and with terms of the byproducts, okay, that the byproducts are not just masqueraded as a vitamin, okay, like the fluoride fiasco. Um, Now, here is the best interest of all naval moon nakshatras to deal with that issue by finding the most compatible areas for us, also maybe astrocartographically, rather than to try to eliminate, because in such collisions both lose housing, ideas, and so on and so forth. And those that think that they gained, what of the ideas they lose. Let's say they could gain the house, but what the idea of what will be done with the house they lose. Yes, society with no women, just like society with no men. Okay? Um, there are communities, let's say, of women where if a man harms a woman, he is exiled, which is extreme form of. But then they are usually juxtaposed to societies that radically harm women. Um, and those things can exist as, um, I don't know, shelter or as emergency society. But for society to sustain, yes, it doesn't exist without men or without women. And I think it doesn't exist as either matriarchy or patriarchy. Maybe some men are happier living in the matriarchy. I don't know. Um, but I think that it's not about one bossing the other. Um, in China, by the way, how the men get an allowance, and the women tend to all the bills and stuff. Yes, each people choose their own, and each choice is valid. Okay, but choice here is a big issue.